Hey everyone! Welcome to Update X24H, your go-to channel for the latest news, hottest dramas, breaking stories, and all the buzz from the world of entertainment. We're here to keep you updated, entertained, and always in the loop. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing family, because here at Update X24H, we bring you the news that matters, the drama you love, and the stories you can't miss. Thanks for being part of our community. Let's stay connected, stay updated, and keep the good vibes rolling. What happens when grief turns into power and silence becomes a protest? Tonight, we uncover the extraordinary story of how one man's mysterious death, actor Yu Ming Long, united millions across the world, shaking China's entertainment industry to its core. What began as heartbreak quickly became a symbol of truth, resistance, and the unbreakable voice of fans who refused to be silenced. This is not just another story about a celebrity, it's about a generation demanding honesty, and a film called Hope that, ironically, became the symbol of their loss. Yu Ming Long was not simply another actor in China's crowded entertainment industry. He represented the rare combination of humility and quiet strength that audiences instinctively trust. When news broke in September 2025 that he had died after a fall in Beijing's Chaoyang district, the initial shock gave way to disbelief. The brief police statement released hours later provided no clarity, only a hollow formality. Friends admitted they had lost contact with him days before his death. To those who had followed his journey from hopeful musician to respected actor, the silence surrounding his final moments felt unbearable. In a culture that often celebrates success but avoids confrontation with pain, this silence became louder than words. Social media was the first to react. Within minutes, millions began to share his name on Weibo, remembering his calm presence and sincerity. For a fleeting moment, digital space became a sanctuary of grief. But almost as quickly, the sanctuary was erased. Hashtags carrying Yu Ming Long's name disappeared from search results. Entire comment sections vanished overnight. Official accounts refused to elaborate, and users who tried to discuss the matter saw their posts removed. It was as though the internet itself had turned its face away from mourning. What remained was an eerie stillness, a collective understanding that something was being hidden, and that the truth was no longer simply about one man's death, but about everyone's right to ask questions. Yet out of this suppression emerged an unexpected form of unity. Fans across China, many of them strangers to one another, changed their profile photos to solid black backgrounds. They began to repeat the same sentence in quiet defiance. "We will not be silent." These 5 words traveled faster than any official announcement, creating a rhythm of solidarity that no algorithm could erase. It was an act both fragile and powerful, the digital equivalent of holding candles in a storm. People who had never met Yu Ming Long began to feel as though they owed him a voice, a simple affirmation that honesty still mattered in an industry increasingly ruled by image and manipulation. The phrase spread beyond borders. Artists, students, and journalists from neighboring countries joined the conversation, translating the message into multiple languages. In each translation, the essence remained unchanged. A promise to remember, to keep asking, and to refuse complacency. Within that brief moment between tragedy and censorship, something profound was born. A realization that collective empathy could become a form of protest. The quiet persistence of ordinary people gave shape to a truth often forgotten in times of control. When institutions fall silent, it is the human heart that continues to speak. What began as the mourning of a single actor had already evolved into a movement fueled by compassion, dignity, and an unspoken demand for transparency. By early October, the echo of Yu Ming Long's death had traveled far beyond China's borders, carried not by news agencies or official statements, but by ordinary people who refused to forget him. A digital sea of signatures began to rise on international platforms. Justice for Yu Ming Long. Within 7 days, more than 400,000 names appeared beneath the petition, each one representing a fragment of grief, disbelief, and moral outrage. People from Japan, South Korea, Indonesia, the United States, and Europe joined voices with Chinese fans, transforming private sorrow into a collective demand for truth. What made this movement powerful was not its size, but its sincerity. It was not orchestrated by organizations or celebrities, but by individuals who felt the weight of injustice pressing on their conscience. While the world gathered under the banner of remembrance, the entertainment industry continued with its carefully planned calendar. Among the scheduled releases was a film titled Hope, a patriotic biopic about the revolutionary thinker Li Dazhao. The irony of the title did not go unnoticed. The film was conceived to inspire national pride, yet its release, just weeks after Yu Ming Long's death, felt almost cruelly out of step with the public mood. Cinemas were decorated with bright posters and slogans about sacrifice and courage, but audiences saw only the contrast between scripted heroism and the unanswered tragedy of a real man. When Hope premiered, something unprecedented happened. Theaters across Beijing, Wuhan, and Shenzhen reported sold-out screenings, yet countless eyewitnesses posted images of empty seats. Online ticketing platforms showed no availability, but local reporters discovered near-deserted halls. The illusion of success was being manufactured before the public's eyes, and the deception was impossible to ignore. People began to suspect that the industry was not merely indifferent to their pain, it was actively rewriting the narrative. The phrase "hope is an illusion" started circulating on Weibo and Twitter, not as sarcasm, but as a quiet expression of disillusionment. As days passed, film review sites reflected the backlash. On Douban, Hope received one of the lowest ratings of the year before its comment section mysteriously closed. Anonymous accounts flooded the page with perfect 5-star reviews, their identical wording betraying automation. It was the digital equivalent of applause performed by ghosts. The more the system tried to control the story, the more the audience turned away. What had begun as an attempt to project unity had turned into a mirror exposing a fractured relationship between art and trust. In the midst of manipulation and censorship, one truth remained. The public no longer believed in curated narratives. The boycott was not born of hatred but of heartbreak. People refused to celebrate when they were still in mourning. They stayed home, not because they despised cinema, but because they wanted authenticity, because they understood that hope, when imposed, loses its meaning. The tragedy of Yu Ming Long had become the lens through which an entire generation began to see the cost of silence and the power of conscience. The storm reached its height when an unexpected revelation reignited public outrage. Director Chang Ching-song released screenshots of a private WeChat conversation suggesting that Tian Herong, the leading actress of Hope, had been with someone on the night Yu Ming Long died. Whether authentic or fabricated, the images spread across the internet like wildfire, fueling speculation and deepening distrust. Tian deleted her social media accounts without comment, and that silence, perhaps intended as retreat, was perceived as confession. In an atmosphere already charged with suspicion, her disappearance became another symbol of fear, another reminder of how truth could vanish in the shadows of power. For many, Hope now stood not as a film but as an indictment of the entire industry. Its patriotic message rang hollow against the whispers of conspiracy, its bright posters fading under the weight of unanswered questions. Cinemas were no longer places of entertainment, they had become arenas of quiet defiance. Empty seats, once a sign of failure, now represented a moral stand. Audiences who refused to attend were no longer simply avoiding a film, they were expressing grief, anger, and disillusionment in the only way they could. The spectacle of censorship and manipulation exposed a deeper fracture between art and integrity. Every attempt to control the narrative only made it clearer that something was being hidden. The more officials insisted on order, the louder the silence became. Hope, a word meant to inspire, had turned into an irony too painful to ignore. Its carefully crafted story about courage and truth was now overshadowed by the reality of fear and silence in the industry that produced it. Yet, beneath the bitterness, something profound began to take shape. Viewers realized that their collective refusal carried a moral power of its own. They could not rewrite the past or resurrect Yu Ming Long, but they could insist that his name not be buried beneath propaganda. In that defiance there was a flicker of genuine hope, the kind born not from slogans or screens, but from people who understood that truth, however fragile, remains the only foundation upon which real art and real humanity can stand. As hope crumbled under boycott, something extraordinary happened. People began gathering in parks and city squares across China and abroad, lighting candles, playing Yu Ming Long songs, and sharing messages of remembrance. In their mourning they found strength. They proved that even in silence, unity can speak louder than power. On social media, the hashtags #Justice for Yu Ming Long and #Boycott Hope became a global chorus. Not against a nation but against indifference. Not to destroy art, but to reclaim its soul. For millions, this story isn't just about one man's tragic end or a single film's failure. It's a reminder that art must heal, not manipulate. That hope, real hope, lives in truth, compassion, and the courage to speak even when no one listens. And perhaps that is the greatest irony of all. A film meant to inspire nationalism instead awaken humanity. Because no matter how deep the silence, the truth always finds its voice. If this story moved you, don't let it fade. Subscribe to Update X24H, where real stories meet real voices. Your support helps us keep exploring the untold, the unseen, and the unheard. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the smallest voice can change the loudest system.